Welcome back to Figuring It Out. I'm Rachel Lee. Before we get into this episode, if something lands for you here, if you feel seen in it, follow the podcast, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need this conversation. That's how this reaches the people it's meant for. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. All right. I want to talk about triggers today, but not in the way maybe other people might, because triggers aren't you being dramatic. They're not you being immature. They're not you needing to heal, quote unquote. A trigger is your body saying, hang on, I've been here before. And if you've ever wondered why something small hit you hard, why your reaction felt bigger than the moment, why you walked away thinking, what the hell was that about? This episode is for you. Most people talk about triggers like they're a problem. Something to fix, something to regulate, something to get rid of. But here's what I've learned about myself from watching patterns repeat. Triggers are information. And they're not about what's happening right now. They're about what this moment reminds your body of. Your logic might know you're safe. Your body might not agree. And when those two things don't line up, the body usually wins. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. This is the part that matters. A trigger does not mean you're overreacting. It means the meaning of the moment is heavier than the moment itself. So when someone says, why are you making such a big deal out of this? What they're saying is, I'm only seeing today. But in actuality, like you're reacting to then. And that gap, that's where people can start shaming themselves. But nothing is wrong with you. Something familiar just got activated. One of my biggest triggers still is not being acknowledged. And I don't mean praise. I don't mean validation. I mean being seen. That reaction didn't start in adulthood. I'm the youngest of 3. My brother needed a lot of attention growing up. A lot. And there were always some sort of situation or a crisis or just stress going on. So early on, I learned how to stay out of the way, fade into the background, if you will. I also learned how to be the easy one. And I didn't consciously think I'm invisible, but my body at that time learned something very specific. When things are hard like that, I would tend to disappear. And let me give you an example that still sticks with me. And don't get me wrong, I don't think of it all the time, but when I was in 8th grade, I had graduated from 8th grade and I was class president, and I ended the year with straight A's. My report card was on the refrigerator, held up by a magnet, and no one noticed. Not that day, not that week, not for months. I actually think it was the week before I started high school. And it was my sister who eventually pointed it out to my parents. And it wasn't because they didn't care. It was because at the time, my brother was in trouble. There was a crisis. And when there's a crisis, everything else becomes background noise. So what did my body learn? That achievement doesn't matter when someone else is louder. That being good doesn't get attention, and that I'm easy to miss. So now when I'm not acknowledged, when I'm overlooked, forgotten, assumed fine, my reaction isn't about that specific moment. It's about the feeling of being invisible again. And here's the important part. I know this logically, but triggers don't care about logic. They care about memory. That doesn't mean I make it everyone else's problem either. It doesn't mean I lash out, but it does mean I pay attention. because triggers are signals, not flaws. A trigger isn't asking you to fix yourself. It's asking you to notice what mattered. It's saying, this moment touched something. And once you know that, you have options. You can pause. You can choose how you respond. You can stop turning every reaction into a character indictment. That's where the work actually is. Not in getting rid of triggers, but in understanding them. Before I go further, I want to slow this down for a second and make sure we're clear about what we're actually talking about. This episode isn't getting rid of triggers. It's not about calming yourself down faster, and it's definitely not about becoming unbothered. It's about understanding why certain moments land the way they do. So you're not left thinking, what's wrong with me? Because once you understand the pattern, you can respond differently. Not perfectly, differently. And here's something I've noticed over time. Triggers don't usually repeat as the same situation. They repeat as the same meaning. Different people, different settings, same internal hit. So when someone doesn't acknowledge me or doesn't follow through or assumes I'm fine, it's not that exact moment that hurts. It's what that moment represents. And this is where people can kind of get confused. They'll tend to think, why does this bother me so much? I shouldn't even care. I know better than this. But triggers don't respond to what you know. They respond to what you've lived. And I want to be very clear about this part as well. When I say being acknowledged is a trigger for me, I'm not talking about accolades. I'm not talking about recognition. I'm not talking about praise. I don't need applause. What I'm talking about is being registered, being noticed as existing, accounted for, considered. There's a big difference between good job and I see you. And when you grow up learning how to be invisible in order to keep things running smoothly, your body tracks moments where you disappear again. That's what gets activated. And this doesn't just show up in family dynamics. It can show up everywhere. In friendships, when you're the one who's always doing the check-in, or not invited. At work, when you carry responsibility but aren't considered for decisions. In relationships, when someone says they care but doesn't show any form of consistency. And here's the thing that messes with people. On the surface, these moments seem small, forgettable, not worth even reacting to. But your body doesn't experience them as small because your body isn't reacting to today. It's reacting to a familiar experience of being overlooked while staying composed. And this is where some people can get frustrated with themselves as well. I know I did because I've said it. Where I'll think, well, I know this person didn't mean it. I know it's not personal. I know I'm safe. And all of that might be true, but triggers aren't resolved through logic alone because logic happens after the reaction. The body reacts first, then the mind tries to catch up. So if you have ever thought, like myself, why do I feel so small right now? And why did that hit me in the chest? Why do I suddenly feel invisible? That's not you being dramatic. That's your system recognizing something familiar. In going through different things, here's what I've learned about awareness in this. Instead of asking what's wrong with me, I started asking, what does this remind me of? Instead of spiraling, I have to pause and realize, oh, yeah, this isn't about needing praise, accolades, whatever it may be. This is about being registered. This is about being seen. And that awareness started to give me space between my mind and my body. Not to excuse it, not to make everything okay and like kind of sugarcoat it, but the ability to respond instead of like a natural reflex of blowing up. And this is also why triggers and receiving are connected. If your body learned early that being unseen was normal, it doesn't fully trust moments where you're included, acknowledged, or considered. So even when good things show up, even when people care, there's still vigilance. Not because you're ungrateful, but because your system learned to stay alert. That's why triggers matter. They show you where you're still bracing. So here's the reframe that I can use now in my life. At least I try to, right? I'm not perfect. I still have my moments where I have to like just shut my mouth. But a trigger isn't a problem to solve. It's information to notice. And it tells me this moment touched something older that lived in me. And once I know that, I don't shame myself. I don't shut down. I don't lash out. I take a breath, name it, and then decide what I want to do next. I try and give myself clarity. And let me tell you something. Here's what's interesting about this to me. Because if you met me on the street, if you interacted with me socially, if you worked with me, you would probably never think I have a trigger around being invisible. I'm boisterous. I'm funny. I'm witty. I'm engaging. I'm visible. I take up space. And that's not fake, but it is learned. Because when you grow up feeling invisible, one of the ways you adapt is by making yourself hard to miss. Not for attention, not for praise, but for existence. So the paradox is this. The people who seem the most seen on the outside are often the ones who learned early how easy it is to disappear. That visibility didn't come out of nowhere. It's a response. A smart one, if you will. Because I have humor, personality, presence. Those have become my way of saying, I'm here, notice me, don't forget me. And again, not consciously. It's not like this is some sort of manipulation, if you will. It's adaptation. And adaptation doesn't disappear just because your life changes. Your nervous system doesn't automatically update when your circumstances do. And this is where I think people can tend to get tripped up. They think, I'm confident, I'm outspoken, I'm not shy. So when something triggers that old invisibility feeling, it doesn't make sense. And I can tell you, it doesn't make sense. Because then I sit and wonder, why did that bother me? That's not who I am anymore. And I shouldn't even react like this. But triggers don't care about your current personality. They care about where the reaction was first learned. So even if you're visible now, the sensitivity to being overlooked can still exist. And not because you're insecure, but because your system remembers what it costs to be unseen. And this is a big one that I really want people to pay attention to. Triggers often contradict how we see ourselves. Strong people get triggered by abandonment. Capable people get triggered by being dismissed. Independent people get triggered by inconsistency. And that contradiction is what can create shame. You think, I shouldn't feel this way. But triggers don't mean this is who you are. They mean this is something you learned. This is where awareness actually matters. Because when a trigger hits, you've got those three options. You react and regret it. You suppress it and turn it inward. Or you can pause and name it. Not out loud, not dramatically, but to yourself. This isn't about now. This feels familiar. Oh yeah, I know where this comes from. That pause doesn't erase the feeling, but it can change who's in charge of it. And when I feel overlooked now, I don't spiral. I notice it. I remind myself, this is that old invisibility thing. And when I ask a simple question to myself to know where to go from there, like, is this moment actually asking something of me, or is it just reminding me of that? Sometimes the answer is, yes, I need to speak up. Sometimes it's, no, this isn't personal. But I can't get to that if I'm busy shaming myself for reacting in the first place. If you're listening to this and thinking, I don't relate to the story, but I sure do relate to that reaction, that's the point. Triggers aren't about matching experiences. They're about matching meanings. And once you understand what a trigger is pointing to, it stops running your life quietly in the background. You don't have to eliminate it. You just have to recognize it. So here's what I want to leave you with. A trigger doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means something mattered once. And that matters now because awareness gives you choice. Not to be perfect, not to be unbothered, but to respond with clarity instead of reflex. All right, well, that's all I have for you today. But if this episode resonated, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a review, or send it to someone who's ever wondered why certain moments hit harder than they should. I'm Rachel Lee, and I'll see you next time as we keep figuring it out.